Hello and welcome to PodCrash number 26.
27.
27. Yes. We're racking them up.
You're getting it. You always get it wrong.
Mate, I'm dyslexic. Don't hold it against me. Our guest today is Colin Sturgess, IP champion and individual pursuit champion in 1989. Pro cyclist with ADR alongside Greg LeMond, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So welcome.
Thank you. Yeah,
and he's got a pretty interesting story, which I'm sure we'll tuck into a little bit later on. But before we start, we got the adverts. Got some feedback off the sponsor today. They're actually pretty happy with how the adverts are going, Phil.
Are they?
As much as you were taking the piss out of me. Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
So we're here at the Worlds. We're doing a pop-up by the Prince of Wales roundabout next to the fan zone. So drop by if you want any free coffee and a chat with Philip Hines. And thanks to our partners Lamazocco and North Star. Those two are providing the coffee. And also thanks to another partner of ours, Temper, a mattress like no other. And if you use cycling code 100, if you use discount, I've got worse. If you use discount code cycling100 at www.temper.co.uk, you can get £100 off a new Temper mattress.
Well, you will get negative feedback now.
I know, I've just it's gone to my head. So, Colin, can you talk us a little bit through your kind of role here at the World Championships?
Yeah, so at the moment, I'm doing a sort of brand ambassador role for SRAM and Zip. A friend of mine I used to race with back in the day. Jason Phillips is with SRAM in Germany, so he said a little while back, "Do you fancy coming on board?" And I said, "Yeah, that's great."
Okay.
I've worked with them before doing what they call neutral service. They have a small fleet of neutral service vehicles, so we did it in Ride London and the Classic.
Are you doing the changeovers and stuff if people need it?
Yeah.
Well,
not me personally. I just drive.
Oh, right, okay. Well, that's better than being shouted at by a rider that's
yeah.
a bit angry.
Yeah, no, it's horrendous. The other thing is, like, don't ever give me a bike to touch on.
Okay.
not a great mechanic.
Well, neither of us are. That's the thing. You get the mechanic provided the whole time, and it breaks, and you're like, "Here you go."
Yeah,
just take it back. Yeah. But you're from Yorkshire, but you grew up in Africa, yeah?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was born in Wakefield, and parents are both Londoners, and both cyclists as well, and they moved up, and sort of gone with the crowd up here. But then Dad got offered a contract in Johannesburg, so that's where we went, and so I grew up there till I was 16.
Okay. Bit of an international accent then.
It's all over the shop.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a bit of South African in there. There's a bit of Yorkshire. There's a bit of there's a lot of Australia in there as well.
Depends which taxi driver you're speaking to,
exactly.
I guess. But I heard you saying that with growing up in altitude in Africa, that probably gave you a bit of an advantage when you started to take on with cycling.
Yeah, Joburg's not at massive altitude. It's about 2,200 meters or something. But all your formative years, you growing up from 6 to 16, and like big sporting background there, big sporting culture. I've got no physiological proof other than, sort of big set of lungs and, very functional body, I guess. So, yeah.
Have you always been a cyclist, or what age did you start on?
I got my first road bike when I was 7, and I think I had my first race when I was about 8. So, yeah.
So straight away.
Straight away, yeah. I was pretty woeful. I freewheeled everywhere, but
that's the best way. It's free speed.
Yeah, exactly. Get aero.
So how did you come to kind of joining and getting involved with the British cycling team?
So when we came back from Africa in 1985, I'd been racing over there with a sort of special dispensation rather than just racing all the junior races, and I was starting to beat some of the pros over there, and I broke national records over there, and there was a guy, a South African pro, that had raced for Peugeot over in Europe, and he took my parents to one side and said, he's wasted here, because of the apartheid. You're not going to be able to race for South Africa overseas. You're
did
British.
That apply to cycling and everything as well?
Absolutely,
okay.
yeah.
Right.
It was a blanket ban. A few ways of getting around it, like riding under an assumed name, which a few South Africans did. But I wasn't particularly interested in that. I wanted to race for Great Britain. I was really proud of my mum and dad both having represented Great Britain at Worlds. And anyway, long story short, we came back in '85. I famously won the individual pursuit and the kilo, and I think I was second or third in the points race as well. And it was all the early Chris Boardman era as well, and we're contemporaries and rivals. And the BCF, as it was back then, selected us both at the age of 16 for the Senior Worlds in Bassano do Grappa. Wisely, I think my parents turned it down and said, thanks very much, but like he's 16, he's like, just
Did they let you know that you'd been? Did you know you were selected?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
right, okay.
Yeah.
And that didn't lead to any kind of fights or?
No. I think there was a few noses out of joint because obviously he turned down selection, but it's like, come on, the guy's only just come back. I'd been in the country like a month, and just got school commitments, and as a normal little 16-year-old, just pretty rapid on a bike.
That's interesting to hear that you switched nations, because Phil switched nations as well from Germany, obviously.
Yeah.
Different reasons, obviously. But what were you going to say, Phil?
Oh, I forgot actually. You distracted me there.
So then how did it feel to actually... So I guess you took the selection further down the line, obviously.
Yeah.
How did you find that setup and things like that? Because people often have different perception. You go into, like for instance, you go into the Olympics thinking it's the best of the best, and it's all kind of like smelling of roses. And there's a few differences to that when you actually get there.
Yeah, there are. I mean, you both know it. I know it. It's not, it's not all the bright and shiny thing that's portrayed on TV, and you get there and it's like I don't know what your experience was, but I can guess it's pretty similar to mine. It's like you go in, you're blinkered, you've got a job to do, you know what you've got to do. You're not there for the T-shirts, you're not there for the licking stamps. And
I heard you guys only got one T-shirt anyway.
Yeah, well, yeah. Terrible. One skin suit.
Yeah. But yeah, there's that kind of a bit of a battle going on with Chris Boardman a couple of times though, a little bit, for selection and races and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, without blowing my own trumpet, back then I was a lot better on the track than Chris and a lot better on the road than Chris. He was dominant in the time trial scene. And I don't think he'd have a problem with me saying that. You only have to look at the results in the nationals. He was up there, but as a junior, I was top junior in the country, and then as an amateur, the same. Because back then it was very much pro and am. It's not like now everybody's elite or pro or whatever. But then, obviously, come '92, I'd already hung the wheels up by then. But Chris came through. Pros weren't allowed to ride Olympics, so after '88, I'd already signed a letter of intent with ADR, knowing full well that next Olympic cycle I was going to miss anyway, which was a bit of a shame because, like, obviously getting fourth, you're so hungry for it's like, and it is the one medal that I've missed out on, and it's like,
in terms of like it's a different era in terms of drug taking and things like that as well. So is that something you've reconciled, or something that you still struggle with a little bit?
I go through phases. I know that sounds really silly, but a Russian won, Dean Woods, the Aussie, was second, an East German was third, and I was fourth, and there was split seconds between all four of us, and we all know, without speaking ill of anybody individually, that the Russians and the East Germans were just doing a state doping.
Breakfast of Champions, as they called it.
So it grates because the guy that was third was definitely doped to the gills. But
do you kind of think to yourself, you've medalled, or
no? Because I haven't physically, and nothing will ever take me back to that 1988 podium. And I remember, actually, it was a really nice touch by the winner, Umaras. Obviously, the four of us are still there, and I was being interviewed by Hugh Porter, and Umaras came out of the medal protocol as you walk up to the podium, and came over and sort of gave us a hug. And I thought, bloody hell, that's a really nice thing to do. He didn't need to do that. But I missed out on that.
I say I think maybe your influence is that everyone knows about East German doping, but like it's quite a openly talked about thing still in Germany as well.
Because I think when the war came down, it got pretty public, didn't it? And everyone knows that back then it was like a state-sponsored doping program, and I think you just accepted it and just get over it now.
So what do you think now when you... So obviously you say you can't get that moment back. I'm flashing forward a little bit, but just on a side note, what do you think about athletes who are retrospectively awarded medals? So like London's slowly becoming one of the dirtiest games in history in terms of retrospective medals, But as you said, once you can't get that moment back, where do you sit on that?
Don't know if I've ever really given it much thought. I guess, you know, is there a moratorium, or is there a statute of limitations on time? And if so, is it just an arbitrary number? Like, you know, if somebody,
I think it sits at 10 years at the moment.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm long gone.
Yeah.
It's a good question, Callum. I'll give that some thought.
Okay, we'll get you back on and we'll go for a doping special. But I was leading up, so I guess you've obviously got quite a colourful kind of life story, and we'll get into that as we push on. But if you were kind of looking back and speaking to yourself as a kid, like, how would you profile yourself as a kid? Because you've obviously been on a massive journey, which we'll get into later, in terms of all the experiences that you've gone through.
Again, I'm not entirely sure. I think I was pretty insightful kid. Sort of, I knew where I wanted to be, and I knew that it wasn't going to be an easy journey to get to where I needed to be. But yeah, like you say, you don't expect a lot of the challenges that come down the line. But yeah, you know, as a kid, I was just, you know, really, really fixated on becoming world champion. It was the one thing.
Yeah.
You know, I had girlfriends, and, you know, I loved my music, and, you know, in the off season you'd go to a few parties, but it was like, boom, right, when, you know, even at 15, 16, when I was riding schoolboy championships and junior championships, it's like super serious, you know, 3 months.
All or nothing kind of guy,
yeah.
Because we have these discussions with pros at the moment, and some of them say they can have a glass of wine with dinner, and some of them go completely abstinent because they know if they have one, it's going to be another and another.
Academy, when we all used to go out, like pretty much everyone went out, and we used to wave Simon Yates goodbye in the window. And now he's like, look at him now.
Yeah. Everyone was like, look at that idiot staying inside.
He was quite happy to just stay inside and not do it, but he's like
different approaches. So I think
very
that's
successful.
But like, there's some athletes who need that monthly kind of blowout, I guess, as well. Otherwise, they just go stir crazy. It's a funny balancing act, I think.
Yeah.
The reason why I asked you a little bit about like who you were as a kid and stuff, like, obviously you've learned a lot. You've talked publicly about, you know, suffering from bipolar and all that kind of stuff. But from leading through your history, like, not to partition any blame, but it seems like there's quite a few fights, I guess, with various different organisations.
Oh yeah.
So that's what I was kind of trying to pin down on as a kid. Was it kind of, were you very principled and argumentative, or was it just that, you know, so many things were chucked your way and eventually it kind of spilled over and cracked, I guess?
I think a bit of both, to be honest. I came from, I wouldn't say a strict family, but you know, it's like I knew right and wrong.
Yeah.
And the school I went to in Johannesburg, like, you know, the South African schooling system is quite harsh and very, very strict. So I was a very, very respectful child, and I guess as a young man as well. And then coming back to the UK, which is, you know, in comparison, is just like, wow, you know, it's
pretty loose.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wouldn't say I sort of embraced that massively. I still knew when to be respectful and you know, the right things from the wrong things. But I just realised that, like, if you do just walk along meekly, you're going to get trodden on.
Yeah.
And you know, it happened a couple of times. I remember at the Junior Worlds in '86 in Casablanca, like, I could pedal like no one else. It was like, you know, almost like a sprinter's cadence rather than, you know, a pursuiter.
Well, not these days.
No, not these days. Not in 60, 12 or whatever you guys are using.
Ridiculous. That's why I gave up, basically. I was like, they're too big for me. I can't push that gear. But yeah, sorry.
No, that's all right. But you know, I wanted to ride 88 or 89. It's a windy outdoor track, bumpy, really sluggish, and I like to sit at about 120 RPM. Nice, you know, get in a rhythm. And the national coach at the time, the track coach, would not let me. Like 90 or 91, and I was just
it's like the old
why?
School days, isn't it?
Yeah, why do that to somebody? And you know, I had to ride 90, and sure enough, you know, I can't remember. I think I got 5th in the pursuit or something like that, and 6th in the kilo, which is forgettable. But I could have medalled.
Did that? Or do you think you lost the race before you got on the bike a little bit? Because it was such a big distraction.
Yeah.
That argument.
Yeah.
Because I remember, like, some of these things were so fixed. Like, speaking to Jan van Eyden, my coach through a lot of my career, he was like, we had a race gear. Like, it didn't matter if it was concrete, wood, altitude or not. You've got a race gear, and that's it.
Yeah.
and it was 92 or something like that.
And that's probably why the times were so much slower back in the days as well, because like, no one really thought about riding these big gears.
No,
well, it's because the discovery of the big gears, you end, so as you go up the spectrum, you start getting slower, and then eventually you start getting faster again when it gets ridiculously big.
The French guys were like the first nations to ride bigger gears, but
still gone crazy though.
I wouldn't even ride 90-inch gear as a warm up now. Like,
really,
that's like too small for me.
Yeah. The biggest gear I ever pursued it on, I broke a world record in '91 at Stuttgart Worlds, and I rode 1.8.
Really?
91.8,
yeah.
Wow.
51.15.
What do you think the gear the Aussies would have been on for the World Team Pursuit record?
117, 118.
117, yeah.
Yeah. Even 120 maybe.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've gone a bit technical in our fan base.
Yeah, sorry.
It's a bit broader than that, but we like to indulge in that sometimes. But there's something really piqued my interest when I was doing the research, and when you joined ADR, you said that ultimately you left that and you left cycling quite disillusioned about the practices that you'd seen. Are you able to talk through that story a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So, I'd come through the British system at that time, which was amateur. I'm happy to say that, back then it really was, an amateur setup, and there was no funding. So, it was a case of, right, you get to the World Championships on nothing more than, a Barocca and a multivitamin tablet.
Yeah.
Which, is absolutely fine. I had no desire to have B12 injections that some people were having or anything like that.
Yeah.
And then almost overnight, you immerse yourself in this professional lifestyle. And you're told basically, okay, the French term le métier, learn your craft, and injections and products were part of that, or considered to be part of that, rightly or wrongly. There's no condemnation here. It's just you've got to look at it in the context of time as well. And it was you look after yourself. You go see your soigneur. You go see the team doctor if you need to be, but. I remember getting to Paris-Nice, which was my first big race, and got there, and the soigneur just gave us a little vial of tablets and a couple of syringes full of some sort of murky liquid, and I was absolutely horrified. Just looked at it and I was, oh God, what do I do?
And no idea what's in it.
No idea. Wasn't told. That one's for the liver. That one's for the legs. I mean, come on, I'm 20 years old guy. I wouldn't have a clue what this is. I don't have a chemistry degree. And I was rooming with an old guy, old Belgian pro, and he could see I was really, really uncomfortable with it. And he basically said to me, if you don't want to take it, you don't take it, but make it look like you are. So you go to the toilet, take your syringes into the toilet, squirt them down the toilet, and then you dispose of them. But you don't tell this one, It's like, all right.
That's mental, isn't it?
That's such an interesting, because we had Alex Dowsett on yesterday, and he has to have a daily IV for his haemophilia.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
And he was saying that he needs to be really careful to tell all the riders that this is genuine, it's legit, and not to panic. But he said, I think it was on the Sky team, one of the riders walked in and saw him with an injection in his arm, and they went ballistic. They were like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
So from that culture to where we are now, as reported by Alex Dowsett, is a huge transformation, I guess.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, it's it's for the good.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember coming back onto the squad. Obviously we'll update this in a minute, but coming back onto the squad in '98 and going into Manchester and signing the agreement, the no needle policy, and Pete Keane drumming it into me. Colin, you've been a professional in Belgium. No means no.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, that's a bit unfair, but in hindsight, it probably wasn't. It was probably right to say.
Yeah.
Because I'd come from that culture of, oh well, why take a tablet when you can take a or hook yourself up to a drip or something.
And how does that decision affect you? Because I guess David Miller's talked quite publicly about that toing and flowing between, I need a contract, I need a team, I need to keep the soigneur and the team happy, between my values as a person. It sounded like that was quite immediate for you. It wasn't maybe as laboured as David Miller's described.
No, and I think I was lucky enough to. Well, there's a couple of things here. Bizarrely, I had this mindset that, all right, okay, I want to pro race in my first season, and I beat some good pros, And I thought, oh, wow, if I can just do that on a B12 injection, well, fantastic. So there was never a case of like thinking, oh, well, I need to take it to the next stage, right? Well, what's above the vitamins? Then you look into post-operative products and things like that.
Yeah.
Again, all legal, but it's just getting that step
We
closer
call that kind of
to the
TUE grey areas these days, I guess.
Exactly, yeah. And then I won the Worlds, and that was a case of, well, hang on, I've just won the Worlds at 20. Do I really want to go down that? Because if you ever, like even now at 50, and I still race, if I went positive now, can you imagine everybody's going to go back over my career and go...
Well, they say, oh, yeah.
Oh, well, of course. Oh, that 18-minute 10 he did on a road bike. Oh, he must have been doped to the gills.
Yeah.
I wasn't. I'd taken a Barocca before the start. And that was it. It's like... But you will taint yourself. And I just thought, you know what, there's just no point in this. I don't know if I wasn't hungry enough. And it was certainly offered. Doping products were certainly offered. And... This was my other point, is I think I was a bit of a coward as well, because I didn't know what was in them or enough about it to be able to go, oh yeah, that's probably, healthy to take, or, it's not, obviously not healthy, but I was scared of the physical damage that it could do later in life.
I think that's one of the most forceful arguments that I've used quite a lot with the Russian doping scandal, is that it's not for me, the fair play element comes second, the health element comes first. And if you have athletes dying young because of stuff they've taken, that's not acceptable. But I want to talk a little bit on what you said about the public perception of it. So I guess where I sit is so I came into the British cycling system, as a lot of us do, saying this is never going to be something that's part of my life, it's never going to be something that's going to happen. And then, things happen not directly to do with you, but associated with you, Dr. Richard Freeman, Lizzie missing 3 tests before the Olympic Games. And then before you know it, I'm watching Have I Got News for You? And they make a doping joke about the British cycling team. And you think, I'm tainted by that. And you must feel in a similar position coming from the era that you're in, as a clean athlete, struggling with that public perception of the fact that, of course, he was doped. Yeah,
very much so. I won't say who, but... just recently actually talking to somebody, and they were absolutely convinced that from sort of back then you had to use doping to win. And I was like, no, that's bollocks. Absolute crap. There were people riding clean, and rightly you say, by association you just get tainted. And it kind of pisses me off. But you can't let it piss you off, because it's just
when you fight back, it becomes worse, I think, because then it just riles everyone up even more, I guess, There's
some goon on bloody Twitter started accusing me of motor doping. And it's really? For God's sake. How am I... have you seen my Pursuit bike? It's got a fucking curvy tube. How the hell am I... Sorry, I don't
know. You can swear on this podcast,
Oh, thank fuck for that. But, you just start to think where do these people drum up this sort of poison and toxicity?
To be honest, if you'd come up with a motor in that you'd be a millionaire. Because that would be the most technologically advanced thing that anyone had ever seen at that point. But
let's go back to the early days, because he actually retired for the first time when you were 23. Why did you retire?
I'd not got a contract renewed in Belgium, and I didn't at that time want to come back to the UK and race the domestic scene, because it was more crit based and whatever. And I thought I'd made enough of a mark overseas to continue my contract. So I was wrong. I then signed for an American team called Subaru Montgomery, but at the 11th hour that fell through. It wasn't just for me, there was a few Euros missed out. I think there'd been an imbalance between American riders and Euros. 4 of us were let go, and the only contract I could get at late was in South Africa, and I went there, and things weren't great. We weren't getting paid on time. Race bikes weren't there. I was riding a borrowed bike, and it was just a shambles, a real shambles. And at that time, SA did have a massive problem with doping as well. And I remember winning the Krugersdorp Grand Prix, it's a pretty big track race over there. It's just a winner takes all 50 kilometre scratch race. There's no preems in it, and I won it. And I just thought, no, fuck this. I just got nothing out of that. I should be should be pretty chuffed with this.
And
there was nothing.
Was that decision to step away? I'm not saying an easy one, but like we were talking to John Delgare earlier, yesterday actually, and he was saying, you know, he runs his own business on the side, and he does it totally on his terms. Like if he wants to leave, he can leave, and that's in some ways the polar opposite to a lot of athletes that are in the system today, because they come straight out of school, possibly with no exam results, and they have nothing, so it becomes a do or die moment. Stepping away, how did that feel?
Very confusing when I first got back to the UK. I sort of went quite sort of insular and quite introverted for a couple of months, and then, you know, it was just like, right, okay, I can't wallow in my self-pity. I can't, you know, I'm not going to go bashing my brains out up, you know, the O2 riding 10s and 25s for 15 quid first prize. It's just not what I want to do with my sport. What do I want to do? Actually, I want to get an education. What am I good at? Well, I can speak Dutch. Okay, I applied to Hull. I got accepted there. It's a bit too far. Loughborough University, sport, English.
Yeah.
So it was a case of, right, okay, let's, and it was another target. You know, it's like, I'm going to do this. And I got accepted at, as I say, Loughborough, and threw myself into the student lifestyle fairly deeply. Oh, yeah, it was good. You know, you sort of called a mature student. I was only 23, so it was good. I could still sort of, you know, enjoy the lifestyle.
Yeah.
But were you not smoking for 6 years?
Oh,
as well?
yeah. Mate, I've done some silly things, but yeah. I mean, at university, it wasn't
Phil's
too
an
bad.
ex-smoker, by the way, just as a
Noah's younger.
disclaimer. that was a fist bump for anyone who's listening and not viewing.
Yeah, at university, I used to, you know, have ciggies and obviously drink and, you know, carouse and just be an idiot. But when I stopped in 2000, my second wife smoked heavily, and it was a case I started, you know, picking up cigarettes in the evening, and then it would be lunchtime, and then it would be with your coffee in the morning, and whatever. And the next minute, you're on 30 a day, and I did that for a good 5 years. Yeah, I know, it's horrendous.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
so you're not tempted anymore?
No.
Really?
No. It's anathema. Honestly, it's just like cracks me now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to. So mental health is something that's quite important to me, and you know, hopefully to a lot of our listeners and anyone else as well. Like I've suffered pretty badly with severe depression and anxiety. When did that start to become a problem for you? I guess.
I think it was quite early on. I think, if I'm fair, there's probably been a little bit of it in my childhood as well. I was quite an anxious kid, and living alone in Belgium, sort of that was really hard.
Or even today, that's the make or break moment for a lot of young athletes. Yeah.
There was nobody there for me, you know, and I'm certainly not blaming my DS at the time. You know, he had so many stars on that team and so many problems in the background with the sponsor wasn't paying, and you know but he wasn't there for me. Nobody was there for me. And you know, I look back now and look at things like, you know, I won my first pro race, as I said earlier, and then it was like chuck the bike in the back of the car, drive home, right, I've got to wash the bike because I'm racing again tomorrow. Oh, great. And I lived in an apartment block, so it was up in the lift, get a bucket, come back down, clean the bike, go back up, do the washing. And you shouldn't be doing that. When you first pro race, you should be like, yes, you know, let's go and have a couple of jars. But it wasn't. It was just like, ho hum, right, here we go. Yeah. And you know, that happened a couple of times, and it's just like coming back to an empty flat in Belgium back then, and you know, it's just like I look back and go, yeah, there's been little triggers like that, you know. And then I remember about 8 weeks out from the Worlds, just going into a real bad slump and not being able to train properly, not looking after myself, eating really badly, sleeping crap, and just feeling just like, oh, you know, I could end this now. I don't want this in my life. I don't, you know. But I didn't know why I felt that way.
Yeah.
I thought it was just like, a bit of homesickness maybe. Is it homesickness? No.
When was the realization that it was becoming an issue? Because I guess like I can look back and realize that certain behaviors were pulling me lower and lower and lower. but it's only on reflection that I've really realised that, I guess. So like the being isolated in Belgium, were you aware of that at the time, or where did the moment come where it's like, this is abnormal and I need to do something about it, I guess?
I think it was...
If that ever came.
No, it came, but it came a lot later.
Yeah.
Again, you know, in hindsight, those first 3 years in Belgium, you know, there were episodes of depression and episodes of mania, I guess. But I didn't recognise them, and I didn't know how to recognise them, and I don't think many people would have back then either, particularly not in a sporting context. But when I moved to Australia in '95, that's when sort of my wife's family noticed, you know, I'd get into quite a sort of deflated state over small things. And then, you know, you'd come out of it and whatever. So it was probably, you know, late 90s, just before I came back onto the squad. But again, you know, even back then, just had nothing. You know. I saw a sports psychologist for a bit, and you know, that was just more about visualization and relaxation techniques, but nothing about the person.
Well, yeah, that was something I majorly struggled with, because I think, you know, like although everyone turns on the TV at the Olympic Games and sees us win, like we had a real tough road to get there, and I thought, like, to put myself on the start line again and again and again, like, you know, regardless of what Phil might joke about now, I kind of put myself as one of the stronger athletes in there. And there's a key difference between someone's like head falling off, which is a term we use a lot in sport, and someone who's unwell. And I always found like sports psychology just didn't help me with the personal bit of it at all, and they're two totally separate things, I think.
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking with Brad recently, and we shared a room at Commie Games in '98, and he was only 18, and you know, I was trying to show him the ropes and stuff like that, and he said to me, "Oh, I saw a video of you at the '98 Worlds on the start line. I was man one in the team pursuit then, and you've got a smile on your face." I'm like, "Yeah, but like that's in a sport mindset. Like the night before, I'd virtually made myself sick because I was just like, fuck, I can't do this, and I was not. My head wasn't falling off. Not Colin Sturgess the cyclist, but Colin Sturgess the person." Was just like, oh fuck, what have I got myself in for?
So was it mainly nerves?
Yeah, I think so, Phil. Which was odd because I'd never had it before. Like even as a kid, going to my first junior worlds and my first senior worlds and things like that, I wasn't nervous. Like any nerves I had were sort of funneled in and focused to come out on the line. But it's, you know, on that start line, it was just like everything clicked. And there was no nerves. It was just like, right, I've got a job to do. Boom. Yeah. But the night before, like, you know, I couldn't get it together.
Did you feel kind of trapped within that environment, I guess, a little bit? Because I think although cycling's come a long way, and we've seen, you know, people becoming more accepting of, you know, different instances, but like Philippa York transitioning to a female, and people speaking more openly about mental health. Like, you know, I've had my own issues with speaking out with the team and feeling like they didn't understand, they didn't support, and putting me in a bit of a dangerous situation on one or two occasions, possibly intentionally. And you know, and I think that's something that we still need to work forward on. But I guess that's a different era, and if anything, things could be even worse.
Yeah, I certainly in a professional team sense, you know, the manipulation aspect of it, and you know, it is very real, and because, you know, I was a young foreigner on a Belgian team, you know, I wasn't getting selected. I should have been selected for at least one, if not more, classics, and I never was, even though on the training rides we used to do and the recce's and things like that, I would be up there. No, it would always be okay, possibly for Gent-Wevelgem, possibly. And I'm thinking like, well, come on, there's not 8 other riders in the team stronger than me, faster than me. And then sure enough, selection day, didn't get in. It's like, come on. You know? And, you know, I always felt there was this sort of manipulative angle to it.
You've had a few selection issues one selection issue with British cycling as well, didn't you?
Yeah. And, you know, in all fairness to Simon and Steve Paulding and you know, I guess Pete Keane as well at the time, I wasn't reading it properly because I was, basically in a right state with my bipolar.
Yeah.
And it had got to a stage back then when I was really, really volatile. I mean, I remember, and I'm sure Simon won't mind me talking about this, but I remember almost ripping his head off, virtually pinned him to the wall in Tolos in Mallorca.
Tolos has got a lot of history.
Oh, it does. And again, Brad was talking about this last Thursday when he said, mate, your eyes just went like that in a second. And I was like, really? He said, yeah, you wanted to kill him. And I was like, yeah, I probably did. And then later on in the year, again, I'd ridden times, and I'd ridden them in Australia, and then I'd done some at Manchester. And I just didn't want the pressure of having to do these rides in training, because I knew come race day, I'd be fine.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, guys, just.
Phil, you're a bit like that in terms of like, on the race day, you'll always perform a bit. In training, you really struggle to get it out.
Yes, I see a lot of things in me, like even when you're talking about it. I'm like I really, I can't train. Like I'm terrible at training.
Yeah.
And then it comes to racing, I find like 2-3 tenths.
Or one time Shane Sutton blocked my fiver down, and then he did go fast.
I used to say, if you get under this time, you get a 50 quid or whatever, and manage to do the time. Yeah. Like stuff like this really works for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you get, sorry to butt in, but you do get that. You get riders that, like yourself, like me to a certain degree. Like I could absolutely murder myself behind my dad's motorbike on the road because I knew it worked for me. But I just didn't see the point in driving 2.5 hours to Manchester to do 4x4s, maybe 20 minutes behind the Durney. I wanted to do an hour behind the Durney, do 8 team pursuits, this, that and the other.
Yeah.
Get a day, get 2 days out of it.
That's where you're very different to Phil.
Yeah. You wouldn't like it in a team pursuit even in these days.
Less is more.
The TP guys don't do near as much anymore.
Really?
Yeah, they're almost turning into splinters pretty much.
Like sprint efforts.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because the powers they have to hold are just astronomical now. And, and the gears are getting so big as well.
Yeah.
Like they're in the gym as much as they're on the track. Yeah. What's your kind of reflection on that either? Because it just kind of came to me now that there's been quite a few, I don't know, I guess the nicest way to put it is kind of troubled souls that have come out of that either, whether it's Oblee, yourself, a few others. Like, was there something that was really atrocious about that either, or was it just the kind of, like what can you put your finger on it? I mean, like, it seems like Boardman's got out okay, but maybe I just don't know about it. But yeah,
I'm sure Chris has been through some pretty dark phases. And I know he has. Having to quit, when he probably had a good couple more years in him, if not more. And it is. It's quite strange. You look at it,
Or maybe sport attracts those kind of people. It's like, it comes. I can think of a whole bunch of people that aren't public about either mental health issues or about struggles they've had. And it seems maybe sport is somewhere that attracts that kind of need to succeed, or that need, or that drive for ambition. I can't really quite put my finger on it.
Yeah, I think you have to be. Lovely Belgian expression. You have to be a bit special, a bit special. And whether that is, it's just.
And maybe the sadistic nature of that kind of self, not harm, but that kind of ability to put you in a box attracts people to cycling, I guess. For that.
Yeah.
Like you're talking about like wanting to be in a box, tracing your dad's motorbike and doing all the rest of it. Like, Phil vomits every track session, and like I want to push. If I'm doing a session, I'd give it everything I possibly could as well. And there's something quite satisfying about kind of coming into a kilo, and then the darkness starts to come in. In that final lap.
Yeah. I live with Charlie Tunfield, and he gets obsessed with things as well. Like sometimes it's a bad day and he doesn't feel it, so he goes out for an hour and a half, comes back. And then and he says, he really can't be bothered to ride anymore. But like he can't not like miss 20 minutes of his ride, so he has to go out again and do it.
Yeah,
like he's like obsessed with it.
Yeah.
And he suffered with eating disorder as well.
Yeah, he's been on Yorkshire Grit as well.
Yeah,
and so have you actually.
We heard of your story from Yorkshire Grit, Tommy Bustard.
Yeah. Tommy's doing good work. Yeah.
How did you, so before you found effective treatment, how did you manage yourself? I think like one of the things that I found most exhausting when I was struggling was I was in total denial about being unwell, and also the amount of energy that I invested into pretending that I was okay was like astronomical, to the point where I'd come home and just be totally exhausted and then isolate myself from that point. And I think British cycling is a little bit about being self-employed, and like no disrespect to you or Jace, Phil, but you're not the most like natural born leaders. Like I felt as if when I came into the velodrome I had to be kind of chipper, engaging, and the same with the staff. You want to get the most out of the staff, you have to put on that facade. But to keep that up when I was, looking at doing a lift in the gym and all I could think about was bursting into tears was tough. Like, did you invest a lot of energy into masking it?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. And I think particularly latterly, like when I was a young pro, less so because I was very much in awe of other people, and you sort of stand in the shadows and you watch the Eddie Plankarts and the Greg LeMonds and the Alan Pipers and Adri van der Poels, who have charisma and they have sort of a bit of swagger. You watch that,
which I think we're missing from modern day cycling.
Yeah, well, I think it's coming back with Alaphilippe and
exactly.
But yeah, when I 98 to 2000, I almost had a different persona, and it was not a particularly pleasant person, but it got me through. It was just a bit sort of I wouldn't say callous or cutthroat, but it was just like, right, I want this Olympic medal, and I'm going to get it. It doesn't matter if I'm going to ride for the AIS or GB. I want that medal. And yeah, beneath it, I was still sort of very conscious of having to sort of, as you say, just mask it, put that front on, show no weakness. You show weakness, that's it. You are spat out.
You feel like everyone can sniff it. Yeah.
So what do? You harden up and you put on this united front of sort of nothing's getting through. And one of the guys I used to ride with a lot in Sydney, Paul Dobson, we used to go out, and Dobbo's he's a hard Australian trackman, hard as nails, but we'd have some really deep and meaningful conversations, and he always used to say like, oh, you come across as such a tough cunt. And I was like, well, no, I'm not. He said, yeah, but on race day you are. I was like, oh yeah, but that's different again. So it's all about front.
And you've been a little bit open about your kind of coping strategies through that as well, in terms of like self-medication and all that kind of thing, and it's not something that I've felt confident enough to be public about yet, something I might do in the future, but you kind of went through a period of self-medication. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, even if I'm perfectly honest, I still drink far too much now, and back then, even when I was on the squad, I was drinking, and I'd just go, oh God, it's peeing down with rain again. No, forget it. Go and get pissed instead. And sort of after I finished, when I walked off in 2000, I got back to Sydney and basically let the hair down, or what hair I had left.
You had a mullet, did you?
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I'm not particularly proud of it, but it was like Class A drugs and recreational use of drugs. Lots and lots of drinking, and
just for the escape, to switch your head off.
Yeah.
Because you bought a vineyard out there, didn't you?
Yeah, up in the Hunter Valley. Yeah. Just every time we were saving up to buy something in Sydney, it would just go up just that little bit more, or we couldn't get it in the area that we really wanted to live in, and we were looking further afield, and then just thought, what, sea change. Let's just move.
Yeah.
So we just went into the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. And then I heard on the Yorkshire Grid podcast that you've been drinking pretty much every day on the vineyard, tasting wine and stuff.
Exactly.
So that probably didn't help as well.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to be fair, you do have to taste your own wine.
You have to, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's not the way forward. I dare say I've got health problems now, which I know I have through it. And it's something I've got to deal with, and I am dealing with it now. As you might as well know, it's sort of the word functioning alcoholic suddenly just becomes, you drop the word functioning, you do become an alcoholic.
It's a slippery slope slowly over time, I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think there's still an issue with treatment, I guess, a little bit, because for some reason it feels far more socially acceptable to pick up a glass of wine than it does to pop a pill.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the major struggles that a lot of people have, and especially if you're in a public situation and you're struggling to cope. I mean, just to say on the other side, I think it's quite a reasonable thing to go down that road. It's if you're in a dark place and you don't want to take a pill, that's seems like a logical solution, I guess, at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't remember when it was, but I went into a massive, major depression when we had the vineyard. And my first wife worked in health, so she could see the signs, and she was the one who said, "Right, come on, buddy, we're getting you to the doctor." And unfortunately, my doctor wasn't there, and this locum put me on some very, very hard antipsychotics, some old tricyclics, and I literally walked around for about a month as a zombie. Like, it was horrendous.
Which is another major fear of a lot of people seeking help. Like, they think it's going to be, I remember actually when I went to get treatment for the first time, I went to a place that was had residential people as well. Yeah. And then when I signed in and did the whole thing, they gave me a diet sheet, and they were like, "Oh, can you just fill out your dietary requirements?" And I was like, "Well, why?" And they're like, "Well, just in case you get admitted." And then I was like, "No, I'm absolutely not. Like, I'm not going anywhere near that. Like, it's just, it can, like, it's quite a scary thing."
Oh, it is, and I've been institutionalized. I've been in psychiatric hospital twice, and it's not a place you want to be. Yes, it's there for acute problems, and I was very fortunate. The first time was only for 10 days. The second was for a week, but it's not a pleasant place to be. And yeah, the staff are great; they're there to help you, but it's a big wake-up call because you realise, hang on a bit, like, that poor girl that's sitting over there that drank mercury to kill herself, and now she is absolutely fucked. Like, she is sat in that same chair for the last 10 days, and you try to talk to her, and she just has a blank look on her face.
Almost like lobotomized kind of thing, yeah.
And you just think, God, come on. And I guess step by step, you sort of, you help yourself to get better, because by comparing yourself, I guess, to others, and this is, again, with the sporting context, we all compare against each other's, you two. You can see the banter, you can see, but you were talking about, like, racing, you were always a little bit faster in training, blah, blah, blah. So there's that, it's comparable. And yeah,
and I think sport's a dangerous place for people who do have a tendency to look sideways, I think, because, when we're on the track, we've got, like, probably 50 different components in which to measure an effort. And, if you had a glass of wine the night before, it pretty much shows up on the data. Like, there's nowhere to hide.
Don't you?
And that kind of thing, I think, is something where I found myself getting really stuck into, because I was sitting getting help as Olympic champion, and, they were like, "Oh, do you think you're a good athlete?" And I was like, "Well, no, I'm not, because I'm off my bike at the moment because apparently I'm ill," and all this kind of stuff. And the whole aspect of looking sideways, I think, really drove me on to start with as an athlete, and then became so destructive. But did you use cycling as an escape in your earlier years, do you think, on reflection?
Yeah, I think so, until it became the reason I didn't, this is going to sound really stupid, but it actually became the reason for not riding the bike, because it reached saturation point, and I wasn't getting out of it what initially I'd wanted out. As a kid, we all grew up, thinking, we're going to win Olympic medals, and we're going to win this, and and when you get there, you go, tick, what next? Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, what do you do with that? How do you quantify it? How do you go to the next stage? Is it another 4-year cycle?
It's a big thing with the Olympics. So after London, like, just won the gold medal at 19, and then you come back to Manchester and you think, like, But what's next? Like, and I really struggled with motivation for like probably a good 2.5 years.
It's kind
even longer than that.
It's kind of twofold though, because once you do something like a life ambition like Olympic Games, the elation that I know you've talked about getting limited elation of some results, but like I honestly think like you'd be stabbed in the back and you'd be like, doesn't matter, I'm Olympic champion. And then you come home and you realise that everything's still there. It's like the tax bill you were ignoring is still there on the floor.
Yeah.
And I'd kind of maybe got a little bit of a heads up, but you always think it's not going to happen to you, because like Phil ended up homeless on my living room floor after London 2012 because he got burgled and didn't want to stay in the house. And once he'd spilled Rice Krispies over the floor for the 6th time, it was time for him to be evicted. But I think it's honestly like nothing can almost. I think athletes need to be better prepared, not only for the failure element but for the success angle. It's like it takes you to this amazing, and from someone who suffers from bipolar, you know that almost coming from 10 out of 10, and even if before you've been at a 1 out of 10 or a 2 out of 10, sinking to 3 from 10.
Yeah.
Feels like the end of the world.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, very much so.
It's massive. But you're still pushing on, Phil. You're still going.
Still going. Yeah, trying to go for my 3rd Olympics. So see what happens.
How did you regain your motivation then off the back of that?
Well, after Rio, I switched to Man 2. I took a year out. Just enjoyed going out nights out, just doing what I want to do. And then focus on Man 2 and just had like a new thing to work towards to. So I had like a new goal to reach. Yeah. And I think you need something like this.
Learning a new skill, it just keeps things fresh, doesn't it?
Mm.
Yeah.
And once you came back to cycling, you're still suffering from bipolar, and you did the vineyard and all that kind of other stuff. How did your life continue from that point? Did it get better, and kind of where are you sitting now, I guess?
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster. And that is part of bipolar, is you just come to the realization that you are going to have these massive troughs and you are going to have these massive highs. So my first marriage went tits up, and then I met another girl, and sort of things worked out. We got married, and then that went tits up, and I was drinking far too much, and I was basically just very, very florid with the bipolar at the time, and with the drinking as well. It's like just such a bad spiral.
Because you actually ended up being homeless.
I was, literally homeless, and you get to a point where
didn't have a friend's living room to that.
Yeah, that's right. Or no Rice Krispies.
Yeah.
But you almost get to the point where you don't want help, or you don't even know how to ask for help. And it got to that stage, and I was just like sleeping in my car. Then I was pitched a tent, and I remember one day it was like this. I mean, people can't see it out here, but it's absolutely biblical up here in Harrogate. It's a foul, rainy day, and the campsite I was living in was basically flooding. I was just thought, oh God! And I remembered there was an old abandoned farmhouse up in the hills. I actually went and broke into it and slept a couple of nights in there, because it was just it was better than a soggy bed in a bloody tent. But because the mental illness was so bad and the depression, I'd sort of come off this elation and it's like kicking in with the depressive phase. There was never an insight to go, how the hell can I get out of this? It was just like, right, okay, so I need a couple of dollars for lunch. I need to, and it's like you're almost planning to stay in the situation rather than planning of getting out of it. So I was very, very fortunate that my parents found out what was happening. And got me out of it, bought me a ticket back to the UK and basically helped me, sort of settle back in Leicester and drag myself out. And it was only ever going to be sort of come back for 6 months, sort yourself out.
How old were you at the time?
40 something. Yeah, so what am I now, 50? So it would have been 42.
And then from there things started to improve, I guess.
Yeah, it's not, it's still not where I want to be. As I say, I still have a drink problem, and I'm working on that. And I still have, ups and downs, and I'm going to have them for the rest of my life. But for me, it's not. Medication hasn't helped me. Initially, it did, and then it just left me feeling so numb that I've looked at other things and just riding my bike, living healthily, and just trying to look at the signs and read them properly.
Oh, that's so hard though to realise when it's happening.
Yeah, I know.
Or preempting situations where it might happen as well. That's still one of the struggles I have, where like sometimes you end up in a situation you're like, shit, why didn't I know this was going to be a disaster?
Yeah.
It's it's a tricky one, but it's good to hear that you're kind of doing better, and it's a bit of a godsend that there's people out there who will help. I think we've heard it on the team with instances where Shane Sutton picked up the riders from nothing and got them back. My coach played a huge role in masking a lot of my real negative behaviour to the outside world. At Commie Games, he made up that I had a stomach bug, when in fact it was probably one of my lowest points in my life. Yeah, so I think that's one of the key points, is like whether it's I think Steve Peters said to me is like the only thing that's been proven to help people get better is other people, basically, is talking and having that interaction.
Yeah.
How do you both cope now when you have a bad day? How do you both cope?
I think, thankfully, medication on the whole has worked for me. There's a little bit of a mourning process that goes on, because it's a bit strange, because I feel like my previous range of emotions was 10 to 0, and 0 is topping yourself and 10 is like delusionally happy, and medication has narrowed that from about an 8 to a 3. And in some instances you feel like you've lost bits of yourself. You can't ever go as high as that, and you can't ever go as low as that. And to have lived with that on the flexion for quite a long time, it is actually feels a bit weird. And I don't think I've got it as bad to the point where I feel like I'm a zombie, but it definitely took a lot of getting used to realise that in essence I was losing those parts of myself. As much as I might have despised or loved or hated them, I was losing those parts. Yeah. And now basically for me, the key has just been to open up and make sure I've got a really good support network. So as much as I might not be able to lead the signs, I feel like my mum can. I've got my brother, other people around me, and as much as they kind of rallied around you, it sounds like they rallied around me. There's a point with all families where something gets too far. Well, hopefully with most people, and if it doesn't, then I guess they need to seek help from other instances. But yeah, I'd say that's what helps me now, I guess.
Yeah. No, it's virtually the same for me, Phil. As Callum said, the one thing I really, really miss about is the creative process and the massive highs of Bipolar. I don't seem to get that anymore. Even though I've been off all meds now for coming up for 3 years, the one thing I do miss that hasn't come back are those phenomenal highs, the creativity, just feeling invincible and stuff like that, which is a good thing, because that's when you can do yourself a lot of harm and get into situations and problems. I still struggle with the lows. I don't quite hit a 0. I have done in the past in Oz. You probably know, I've had a suicide attempt and self-harm and all these really awful behaviours. I haven't had that since, and I don't get that low anymore, but I bubble around about the 2, 2 to about 7 kind of thing, if you will. But yeah, it is a case of just, even sitting here with you guys, I feel a lot better about myself talking about it, and it's the first time I've met either of you.
Yeah.
It was when I did Tommy's podcast, the next day, I went through all sorts of emotions, because I'd opened up about a lot of stuff I'd completely partitioned, just blocked out of my mind. And it's cathartic to talk about it, and if it does help somebody else, that's fantastic. But it does help to talk about it, and
it's a double-edged sword, though. I think that I remember, Dave Smith's got an amazing story about coming back from tumour after tumour, waking up with paralysis after every operation, basically, and having to fight to walk again. And we did a podcast with him, and it was about an hour and a half, and for the first half hour we were talking about what he's like as a sports person. Yeah. And every now and again he'd refer to before the tumour here, tumour there, and then we have little half-hour breaks, and I was like, mate, I appreciate that the tumour is a big part of your story, but what we're interested in is what you were like as an athlete, like before the tumour. And I think he was quite reflective on that point, saying that like he's quite conscious of that not defining him, and like he's more than that, and also being aware of how much energy it can take him, you know, to do a speech or to do an engagement and go through that whole process all over again. So as much as I find it cathartic, it's not particularly a conversation I want to have with everyone in the street, I guess.
No, there is that as well.
Yeah.
And you know,
but on the plus side, if it helps, I think that's a massive plus.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we need to do to move forward. It's like we need to get rid of the kind of hard man attitude. And I've been quite open about sport. You know, there's a difference between mental weakness and mental illness, I guess.
Yeah, very much so.
And like if you're not like a mentally strong person, then sport like ultimately probably isn't the place for you. It's cutthroat. Like you could get a contract lost tomorrow. Like in our contracts in BC, they could basically ditch us the next day with no excuses at all. And that's the nature of sport. And you're compared to each other and your peers every single day. But I think where the point that I got to at British Cycling was I was saying, you know, I've proven that I'm mentally strong. Like I've been to the Olympics, filled Chrysoy shoes, all yada yada, all the rest of the stuff. But I'm unwell and I need help. And I think that lack of differentiation at that moment was something that caused me a lot of grief, I guess.
I think hearing stories like yours, and I haven't got any mental health issues, but it really helps me to like listen to other people, because you don't really know about it. Like you don't really talk about it.
No,
but to talk about it helps. Like
yeah,
like
and
people
I think the other huge positive is that I don't actually really mind people saying the wrong thing, as long as it comes from a good place.
Yeah.
So it's like you've told me a million times to get on magic mushrooms because it'll probably help, and I'm like, Phil, I don't think that's the most helpful thing in the world, but
CBD oil told you.
Yeah, but what I can see behind his eyes is like a guy who truly wants to help.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to recognise that. But I think that if you're looking to, I mean, like, helping someone with mental health issues is something that should be left to professionals, but your role is, if you know someone with mental health conditions, is to support them as much as possible. And as long as it comes from a position of, you know, goodwill, love, whatever you want to call it, I'm pretty happy to have a conversation with anyone, I guess.
Yeah. I'm the same. I mean,
and to wind it slowly up, what's next for you? Because you're still racing as well.
Yeah, I had a crack at it again this year. Unfortunately, I got sick. I had glandular fever. Raced Rutland Melton, and I knew something wasn't right. I was just like, muscles feeling like they got DOMs constantly, and just like, just really, really tired, and the fatigue. And so I had this blood test, and it came back with the markers for glandular fever, which I did have years ago when I was in Australia. And I was like, no wonder I've been absolutely shot. So yeah, I've not been. I rode a National B last weekend. And I sort of scuttled around in the bunch and had a good laugh and whatever. And
that's always been your style, isn't it?
Yeah.
Leave it to the last minute. And I guess my final question to you is like, as someone who went through loving cycling as an escape to hating it, to now going back to loving it again, are you in a position now where you actually have found that initial love for cycling? Because it sounded like it became, you know, whether it's Belgium or anything else, it sounded like it became something that actually became detrimental, I guess.
Yeah. You know, I've not got to the point of love where, you know, I'd go out in this.
No, neither would I. But I think that's just you're loving fair weather cycling, basically.
Exactly.
That's what Zwift is for.
I wouldn't say I found that sort of initial love that, you know, when I was a teenage kid, poring over magazines and watching, you know, the VHS tapes that you know your dad would bring back. But you know, things like this. I think this is actually the first World Championships I've ever been to that I've not raced at, and it's really quite exciting seeing it from, you know, a perspective of not being in the team hotel, not training every day, not, you know, just like with the blinkers on, but actually going out and walking through the fan zone and just, you know, walking quite. I don't say this in an aggrandising way, but walking down the street in anonymity, people don't know you've been, you know, a cyclist or don't know your background or anything like that, and just listening to conversations. And I asked a woman, just like randomly walked out of the house on the way up here, and I said, you obviously live here, what's the feeling? And she's like, oh, it's grand, oh, this is fantastic. And we had a little bit of a chat about it, and she says, you know, I've met so many people from so many countries, and I'm actually quite excited by it.
Yeah.
Which is nice because, you know, when you've immersed yourself, you know, as from from early days. Almost 45 years. If you look at it, sort of get your first little pushy at 5.
Yeah.
45 years of immersing yourself in the sport. Still getting excited by it. It's great. I've been taking these rides out with SRAM and riding with people, and they go, "Oh, remember your 18-minute 10 on a road bike?" And it's like, "Oh, well, you've got a good memory. Well done, mate." But it's really nice that people are excited about the sport, and to have the Worlds. I mean, I know we've had the Worlds on the track here, and we had 2012, but it's 1982 since the Road Worlds were here, and it's a big thing, and it's great.
And people are excited to have guys of your era back, like whether it's Philippa York, Glenn Mobley, yourself. Like people, that's for a lot of people, that's the kind of bread and butter of cycling, and an era that they really kind of hark back to and wish was still going on now, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah. But anyway, we wish you all the best with your activities going on in Yorkshire, and of course with moving forward and all that kind of stuff. But it sounds like you're in a far better place than you definitely were.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks,
do you have
Callum.
any shout outs you wish to do, or for social media or SRAM or Zip or anything like that?
Guys, I'd love to say massive thank you to Jason and Geraldine at SRAM, and I'd like to say again a big thanks to Dave and Dylan at Qoda. They've been looking after me brilliantly. And yeah, just in general, I just want to say thank you if you're out there listening, for giving up your time listening. It's an absolute honour to meet you both, and it's just really nice to be able to sort of get back into the sport that I fell out of love with, and now I'm back in love with. It's just
it's a real cathartic cycle, and one of the things that drew me to cycling in the first place was that community and that enthusiasm, and that doesn't leave as much as you might leave it. It's always there. So I'm going to sign off with a quick thank you to our sponsors as well. So we're here at the Prince of Wales Roundabout at the World Championships in Harrogate, so pop down and have a visit if you'd like a coffee, provided by North Star and La Marzocco. And we've also partnered up with Temper, so if you use discount code cycling100 you can get £100 off a new Temper mattress. So if you want to redeem, go to www.temper.co.uk. Thank you very much, guys. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.